Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the front Jeff Kaufman and Marcia Ross, who brought you this amazing film.
Thank you so much. We have a panel coming up, a Q&A, and we hope that you can stay for that. The mic is not on?
Let's try to fix that.
I usually bring my own personal mic with me wherever I go,
Did that help?
but it broke. Thank you so much. There's a Q&A coming up in just a moment. I hope you'll stay for that as well. We want to thank so much the Pride Center of Vermont for being a wonderful partner in this entire process. Vermont Freedom to Marry Task Force being a great supporter all this way, and so many people touching our lives as we've had a chance to work on this film. We also want to thank Main Street Landing for donating this facility as well. I want to say something in just a moment, but I know that Marcia has some remarks too. So let me say that along with other just remarkable people to work with, it's been a remarkable pleasure to work with Marcia.
I don't know, so we're, I just want to say thank you. There's so many people here tonight who have given us so much. I don't know if this is working. Is it working? That's working. Can you hear me? No, so I'll just talk loud. I use my theater training.
You just have to be close to it.
With a very close to it? How's that? Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you. There's so many people here who are in the film, and also the incredible amount of support. I particularly really, Lola Van Wagenen, where are you hiding back here? Yeah. Please, Lola, we could not have made this film without you. It would have been impossible. So thank you. And also, there are a lot of people here tonight who've contributed. I hope you all saw your names up there. Everybody. And there's something that I just want to say on a personal level is what Beth says, that we came here just a little over 2 years ago to start making the film. And the people that I've met over the course of these last 2 years making the film, just incredible group of people, and you've been so welcoming to all of us, and it's been an extraordinary experience being here and participating in this experience with everybody. So thank you.
Before we do the panel, I'd just like to introduce some of the people who you saw on screen to ask them to stand up. Now, when I do that, of course, there are so many other people who helped in so many other ways, and our thanks goes out to everybody. But just to start, David Moats, are you here? Writer extraordinaire. And David was a wonderful help behind the scenes as well. Is Diane Derby here? She wasn't sure if she was going to get in the room or not. She was here. Well, we'll applaud her spirit, which is driving home. Joseph Watson, who represents so many people who did volunteer work behind, grunt work for 20 years. Joseph even grew a beard back, so one later shot can match an earlier shot. Who would do that? Let me also introduce, some people will be on the panel, so I won't introduce them now. Let me introduce the couples. Stan Baker and Peter Harrigan, could you stand up, please? Nina, Stacy, and Seth, could you stand up, please? And if you need a drummer at your next party, you can hire Seth. Holly and Lois. Yes. Yeah. Floyd Neese. And if I'm not mistaken, I think everyone else is on the panel. Have I left anyone out? Just thank you, everybody. It's just been a great pleasure working with you. And why don't you introduce... Beth is on the panel. Beth, were you going to come up on the panel? Okay. I'll just introduce the panel, okay? So we're also pleased to have a chance to talk to you and to reflect on the film. So let me introduce Bennett Law, who is going to moderate the panel. Bennett?
No, I think I do. It changes every day. Beth?
Beth Robinson.
Susan Murray's here. Shap Smith. Bill Lippert is going to come up.
Sherry?
Where's Sherry? Sherry Corbin. And the two of you, Marcia and... I don't think I need a microphone, right? All right. So my first question for the panel is, Beth, this is for you. Has the Smithsonian come for that blue suit yet? Yes, come on. That'll be there. Okay, so we would like to take your questions for these folks. Many of you know many of them very well. Some of them you probably don't know so well. I have the opportunity to ask the first question, and so I think I'm going to ask, and maybe we'll start with you, Sherry. I'm really interested. I was on the Freedom to Marry task force, and I was one of the, honestly, not such a believer at the beginning. I got in a lot of trouble with that, actually. I told Susan Murray this story. When they used to do these road shows, and we used to do town halls. People remember going to the town halls around the state. Susan and Beth would come do their deal. And at the end of them, I went with this boyfriend I had. And at the end, he was so overwhelmed. He said, well, you would marry me, right? And I thought, what the hell? His parents came up from Oklahoma for our engagement party. I was like freaked out. So that was the end of that. So then I joined the Freedom to Marry task force. I still wasn't really a believer, but I thought, wow, you know, like everyone else, just so motivated by Beth's focus, and she was amazing. And so I was like, I'll go for this ride, sure. And I promised her I would stay till the very end, and we did. So my question for them is really, when did it become real to you? When did you honestly think it would happen? Not when did you want it to happen, you know, but when did you honestly think it was going to happen? Sherry?
Want me first?
You're first.
I guess I was the. I have never been told I need a mic. I was the token native Vermonter on the board at one point, and I think I've always had this innate faith in Vermont that they'll do the right thing. I really thought we were going to get marriage to come down. I thought that there's no way Vermonters aren't going to do that. And then it came to the next round, and we didn't do that. And then we're talking around the table, and we're talking about legislatively, and I'm like, well, we'll be the first. And Beth looks at me and goes, no, we're not. New Jersey's going to be. I was like, no, we're going to be the first. And I just have that faith in Vermont that we're going to do the right thing. So it's always been there.
Oh, never done. Chef, how about for you?
So, I don't know, I think you saw when I first started. You know, I think that when I realized, I always believed it was going to happen. I just wasn't sure whether it was going to happen in 2009. And when during the fall, I was running for speaker, and it was a conversation in a lot of those discussions that I was having. And I think I realized probably when Floyd and I were sitting at a meeting.
Nope, that didn't help.
We were sitting in a meeting with Beth and Steve Kimball sometime in December of 2008, and I think I realized then that it was going to happen. But that was when I still believed Beth that we weren't going to get a veto. My faith was a little bit shaken after that.
Well, Beth, you're terrific, of course, but I need to say that Beth also assured me before the case, or as the case went to the court, Bill, you can assure your colleagues they are never going to have to vote on gay marriage. This is a judicial process only. And I can look back to John Edwards and Diane Carmoli and others who absolutely said, please, I hope we never have to vote on gay marriage. Spare us. I have to say that I came to believe it when we sat together that Friday and Monday when Beth went home and we all went home without the votes. And Floyd went on a nighttime ride through the roads of Vermont to talk with some key legislators, have a dear talk, close talk. And, but truthfully, until the roll call was done, I wasn't really sure.
Can I, before I answer the question, can I just say thank you to so many people in this room? I've never seen all those credits before, and like, almost everybody in this room is in the movie.
I was sitting here and I was just aghast. I forgot to mention John Edwards, who was here.
So the question was, when did I think we were going to have marriage in Vermont?
Yes.
Before we filed the lawsuit. Really. I mean, we were so busy doing everything on a day-to-day basis, so you weren't really looking at the big picture. But for me, that was true.
You might have detected a theme that my overly optimistic predictions sort of flowed throughout this process from beginning to end. And I, like Susan, was convinced before we filed the lawsuit as well that it was just a matter of going through the case and then we'd be done.
And Bill
Great.
is
What
right.
questions do you folks have for our panelists? Yes.
Since the decision in 2009, first and foremost, it's wonderful to see lots of people I haven't seen in a while, so thank you. Have you been drafted, or have you been were you contacted by any other states and any other efforts that were going on? I mean, we have seen in the last 6 years a tsunami of change. And it's been breathtaking. And when the DOMA was struck down just a couple of years ago, and then we won the freedom to marry, it was unconstitutional for the, I mean, where were you all, were you tapped by any other states and movements for your expertise in this process?
So, at least in 2009, both New Hampshire and Maine were going through the same process that we were. And I was in, the speaker in Maine, Hannah Pingree, was new as well as I was. And so we were talking a lot, and Terry Norelli, about who was the speaker in New Hampshire, we're talking a lot about how we would approach it and what the different responses each of us were getting. We ended up going first, I believe, and then Terry and Hannah afterwards. So we were talking that through. I remember being at a new speakers conference in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Hannah and I and the speaker from Arkansas, Robbie Wills, were riding to the airport together back from the conference. And Hannah and I are talking about how one of the big things we were going to have to deal with this year was marriage equality. And Robbie from Arkansas was like, really? So I'd just like to point out 3 other people who are in the room, if you don't mind. One is Gay Symington, who was the speaker before me. We would not have had the majority back, and we would not have had the votes to win in 2009. And then Senator David Zuckerman, who fought the good fight for a long time. And a person who quietly led this effort in the House for years, Mark Larson, former representative.
You talked about the rapid pace of change, and I want to ask Sherry to repeat for folks here something she said while we were being filmed at Joe Nussbaum's house. And the question was about the Supreme Court sort of mandating marriage across the country. And Sherry, do you remember what you said?
Well, it actually came after the DOMA decision, and I was kind of like, God, we got to keep doing this. I'm really done. And I called Beth, and I was like, Beth, how do you feel? She's like, oh, I'm really psyched.
Wait a minute. You're going to be disclosing a confidence, I can tell you. No. Just remember.
And in an airport, and now I don't know what I'm saying. All right. So I was really annoyed that we weren't just done with it, that the question wasn't finalized. And there was a big party in Chittenden County to celebrate the DOMA decision, and because Beth and Susan wouldn't come, they asked me to speak, and I was like, oh. So I did like I usually do, which was wing it, and I just said, it dawned on me that Vermont is such a better place for having gone through what we went through. And it's really selfish of me to not let the other states do it too. The same feeling, did it, Bennett?
Well, that was it. She stunned me. There's probably footage of me going, what the hell? It was like, I don't want a Supreme Court decision. I want every state.
Oh, I didn't go that far. But the change in Vermont, I mean, not in this room so much, but when you look around the face of Vermont today, there's so many people that are new here to Vermont. I won't say because of the civil union law, but because of the civil union law. They don't know what Vermont was like before. And for me, I was always out in my town, but I wasn't out until I started sitting at the local fairs, and then I was out. And that changed who I was in town, and it changed who I was in the state of Vermont. And I think that's true for probably everybody in this room who went through this process. And there's things to be said for that, opening up the closets and getting the heck out of them in your community, in the fabric of your community. Vermont's a much better place through all this.
Is there another question over here somewhere? I saw a second hand. Who's next? Yes, sir.
I'm really pleased that you were able to get the voices of those that opposed marriage equality, and having their voices speak in this will make it much more rounded historical document of what took place. And I commend you on getting them to speak, but I'd like to know how you pulled it off.
I'm dying to speak.
Well, we tried to be honest with everybody. We didn't. We tried to be as clear what our intentions were to a point, and we tried to treat everyone respectfully. I mean, I think that the role model of Beth and Susan and Mary, among others, was to treat people respectfully. So, you know, that's what we did. I knew some of them, like Ruth Dwyer, years earlier, and it was interesting to see them in a different context. And I will say that something I've struggled with a lot since then is that, on some ways, some of those people showed an incredible amount of daily kindness to me and the crew that I had never seen before. And I mean, real kindness, not just because you're a camera crew. And yet they said things that I found abhorrent. And I haven't been able to fit that together in my head, except that life is complicated and you need to try to understand each other. It's striking to me that so many of them, their opposition to marriage equality is like more intense now, not less, and tied up with a lot of other issues. So there's a lot of things to think about. But ultimately, we hope that we treated them with respect on screen, but it also shows in the trenches, you know, either legislatively or socially, what these people had to put up with all the time. And you can imagine how lonely and hard that was to encounter. And I just think what you did was heroic. Yes, I knew Jim pretty well in the old days, and we did, and he said no. And you know, sometimes things work out right anyway, and I think cinematically it's fine.
Yes, in the back.
Jeff and Marcia, I'm wondering what the plan is for the movie to be shown in other places.
Going on. I mean, we're out at film festivals, but I hope that we have everybody's email here, because in the next few weeks, I'm sorry, it's not working. So it's not working. Okay, thank you for asking. We've been playing at film festivals, but I think hopefully we have everybody's emails here so that we can keep everybody informed and you can follow what's going on. Probably in the next few weeks, we're going to be announcing our distribution deal. And early next year, the film will become available to DVD and online and on television, and that will be all happening in the next calendar year, and we'll be keeping everybody informed of all of that through our mailing list.
We'll just elaborate. Why don't you mention a couple other places it's showing? Do you want to do that? Or I'll just say it. I mean, tomorrow it's showing in Austin. In October, if you or anyone you know is in Austin, yeah. It's going to be at the Boston Globe Film Festival in October. If you follow our Facebook page, or anyway, we'll be making announcements as well. But it's at a whole bunch more film festivals.
And it's going to be playing in Indianapolis, in Beth's hometown. Indianapolis.
Big demand in Indianapolis.
We just released, I mean, We premiered the film in June at Provincetown. Very successfully. If you look at our poster, we got sort of wonderful reviews, and a lot of the quotes are up there on the poster in the lobby, and we have a lot of the reviews also posted on our website.
Yeah, let's go to Santa Fe, Boston, other places like that.
Other questions? Yes.
I want to know how you guys were able to work together for so long as a team, and I don't see this ego that's coming through with a person in the group in the film. You have something that you've done together as a group to be able to gel and connect, and how did you do that? How did you check in together as activists for such a prolonged period of time and sustain such difficult work without, having one person sort of override the other? I'm sure you had your ups and downs, but looking at this group of people, you've done a lot of hard work, but there's a lot of hard work to be done yet. So what's your advice for a younger generation of activists who want to work hard, who want to take it to the next level? How do you sustain yourself through a prolonged period of time with a group of committed people? What's your advice?
So Susan?
Mary Alice, thanks for the question. We, Beth and I knew each other beforehand and really got along great already. We worked together in other contexts, so that helped. It does help that there weren't a lot of, the line that Kevin Ellis said in the movie that Beth and Susan didn't care if Mary got the credit and vice versa, it sort of worked in our relationship. Early on, we had to figure out, because Mary's, we were in one law firm together, and Mary's from GLAAD, and usually there's like one person in charge of a lawsuit, for example, and we just decided that nobody would be in charge, that we would work out everything collaboratively and by consensus, and we did. We would discuss a footnote ad nauseum, I remember, and then if someone really felt strongly about it, most of the time the other two would just defer. Or one person was in the minority would say, that's okay, I can let that go. And it just worked. I think you just have to respect each other and respect each other's views and where people are coming from. I don't have a better answer than that.
Maybe we need more women.
Rebuttal.
I want to just say that for me, because in the early part of the film, I always frankly cringe when I go, marriage, really? Partly because I'd made a commitment to try to end homophobia in my lifetime, and it had been a decision I'd made like decades before marriage came along as the vehicle for making this change. And I think part of the answer that I would give you as well is having a deep commitment to take the opportunities that present themselves for the kind of social change that you really are committed to. And for me, I did, honestly. I had to grow into the understanding of the significance of marriage as one of the vehicles for making the social change that I think is so profoundly important, and that I think has driven my commitment to end homophobia. And I think about part of that was well, and that we made a decision as well to commit to gender identity non-discrimination, which took place in the midst of our struggle between civil unions and marriage equality. And that we built the connections and coalitions of respect and commitment that we're not done even now. We're not done. It's exciting. It's fabulous. It's beyond imagining in my lifetime. But we're not done till every young person is safe, until anyone thinking about coming out as LGBT doesn't have to worry about their neighbors and their friends. And I look at many people here who were part of that struggle from years before we got to marriage, and who have continued the fight through marriage. And I think that's part of the commitment. We need a broad vision and a commitment to work together to achieve what we really
really all want.
It wasn't that simple though either. Along the way, especially during the time from 2000 through marriage, through 2009, there was a lot of struggle on the board because the community itself didn't want civil unions, but once we got civil unions, they celebrated them. And now everybody's got civil unions, and now we have to come in and say, you don't really want that, you want marriage. And people are like, we need to change the name of this organization. So there was a lot of internal board strife through that time frame. And I think what kept it going is still that, as you're saying, that belief that there is that end goal. And Beth is an extremely talented, vibrant motivator. And she's kind of like that speedboat running down and you want to get in the wake so that you can be, follow right along with it. But at the same time, she needs all these people behind her to let her do what she does well. And I think really toward the end, we really parceled that out so that every board member filled their role and we worked as a real machine to get things done. So it's not easy, but it's doable.
Can I just add one thing to that? Because you talked about the board, and I think that's important, especially for continuity, but I would hate for us to not acknowledge Robin McGuire and her leadership as our director.
Yes.
I just want to say it's incredibly inspiring, the vision, the stamina, the follow-through, and politics is messy, so it's full of compromise. And thank you for your capacities. What a gift to all of us. Thank you.
So I want to just give one illustration of Beth's persistence. So while I was in the speaker's race, but before I had gotten a chance to win it, I was still practicing law, and I had a case at Lang, Roxbury, and Woke. And I was doing a bunch of depositions down there in the Middlebury office. And I think every time I was done a deposition in Middlebury, I'd get a note from the receptionist, Beth would like to see you. Beth and I were not involved in the case together, but she would be like persistently bringing me to her office, talking to me about, so this is why I think if you win the speaker's race, you should definitely do marriage. We've got these votes, I'm sure about this person. And that was before, it was just like hitting all the angles. She was like, I don't know who's going to win this thing, but I want to make sure that you're going to be good if you win it.
Kevin, do you have a question? Yes, just for the historical record, and I'm not sure, I think I read somewhere that you don't remember, but this is to the Judiciary Committee, so Bill Lippert and Tom Little. And if there was anybody else here who was on that committee, do you remember who was the first person who came up with the words civil union? And a side question, were there any protected terms?
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
Do you want to ask?
Is it Judy?
Well, I think, this is my memory anyway, Tom. Tom had to step out the day and we said, we've got to figure out what we're going to call this after all, because we called it domestic partnership, civil domestic partnership. And we kept going round and round. And I think someone, and I'm not sure who, at one of the public hearings said, please don't call it domestic partnership. It makes me feel like I've been hired to clean the house or something like that. And it was a woman who said that, a lesbian woman, I think. And we finally went around and we said we want something that sounds, we know it's not full marriage equality, but it's every right and responsibility that we can do under the Vermont statutes and administrative law, and we want something that sounds respectful and something that sounds. So at one point, I think someone suggested civil accord, And someone said, "This sounds too much like the make of a car." That would be correct. And I think it was either Judy or Kathy who, it's either Judy Livingston or Kathy Boyer who said civil union, and it just kind of, it suddenly hit us. It sounded sufficiently respectful, and it didn't sound religious, because we were struggling with it not being a religious sounding name for those for whom that was important. And I guess just tell you that as much as it was a struggle to make the decision to support civil unions, I found it profound that within weeks, civil union had entered the lexicon of language. And suddenly, I mean, I could hear national leaders saying, well, I couldn't support marriage, but I could support civil union. And of course, I don't think they had any sense of how profound civil union was as soon as we did it. And so that's, but I went back, Tom, you wanted to say
At the time, there was a legal status in France called Le Pacte Civil. And that's what got us moving in that direction. That ultimately came, we were brainstorming one night to get from Pacte Civil. I remember before it sounded like a car. And then somehow we came up with civil union. And I thought the person who testified in the hearing was a gay man who didn't want to think he was being hired to clean house, but whoever it was,
maybe it was me.
That really resonated.
So my memory was slightly different, was that civil unions came first, and then Judy Livingston, during a break in the Judiciary Committee hearings, went online and came up with Civil Accord. It was about 3 or 4 days after you guys had started floating the phrase civil unions, and it had really struck home. People really liked that phrase. And then Judy came out of the room and said, how about Civil Accord? We're going to go with that. And everybody just went, oh my God, awful, no. I think it lasted for about 5 minutes, but it was panic there for about 5 minutes. That was my memory of that. Yeah, is your memory too? Yeah.
Yes, David? I guess I'm curious, in making the film, the 11 members of that committee really are such the heart of what occurred, and they had to go through so much. I'm curious why you didn't at some point even just list those members, as much for acknowledgement of their work, but the diversity, because am I mistaken, it was ultimately a unanimous vote of the committee. No?
It wasn't unanimous. There was one dissenter who.
That's right,
yeah.
Scribner.
Yeah. First of all,
No, not Scribner. McKinnon.
David, thank you for letting us film on your farm. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. But
Yeah.
I was curious, maybe just still, because there were Republicans who voted for it.
It was a couple of things. One, there was
John Edwards.
Oh, John Edwards. It was a film question. So just in brief, in part we couldn't do everything. Also, we tried to get a good photograph of everyone in the committee, and believe it or not, with all of our efforts, we never found one really good photo that we could use in the film that showed every committee member. It was strange. We tried so hard. We ended up using some Senate Judiciary Committee footage to cover a beat because it just wasn't available. And you're also going for a national audience, and there's just some things that you can't do. So we always want to give credit to everybody because part of this film came out of our respect for public service, but we just couldn't do it.
Do we have one final question? Yes.
So it personally drives me a little bit insane when people, specifically adults, put words in kids' mouths. And so I sort of felt like the opposition was sort of doing that by saying, kids, it's not healthy for them and they don't like growing up without a father or without a mother. And I just wanted to know what you guys felt like that argument.
That's a great question.
Okay, so the question was sort of an observation first, that the opposition in the movie tended to put words, in trying to protect children,
They sort of presented that they knew what was best for children, specifically that it wasn't healthy for children to not have a mother or a father. I get that part right? And the question is really, how did you feel about presenting that perspective in your film?
Oh, I don't need to answer.
Or generally, right?
Generally.
Oh, I was hoping someone else would answer. Do you want to answer it? I mean,
Well, you know, there's a lot of research actually that says that's absolutely untrue, you know, that in fact, there's no difference. And I think that's an argument that a lot of people used to try and, you know, kind of influence how people thought about this issue. You know, they went after the children. I think that you know, when you talk to people, it's really interesting, you know, sort of meeting all of the people, because one of the things that Jeff did, this is a bigger answer to this, but one of the things that Jeff did in all the interviews, and I think many of you will remember this, but he asked every person, what does marriage mean to you? And all of the people that are in our movie that were not in the opposition had many beautiful things to say, what is the relationship, including, you know, being parents, you know, we're parents, we have children. And all of the people that were against it had one consistent answer. It's a union between a man and a woman. That is the one, everybody was against it, said the same thing. And so, you know, it's kind of a scare tactic. I mean, in the end, that's really what, to me, you know, I perceive it as a very manipulative scare tactic to say things, because actually there's no proof in that information. There's absolutely no proof in what they're saying.
Can I say also two things? One, you know, parents teach more by example than they do by words. And when you see people raised in a loving household, a caring household, regardless of who the parents are, you see kids turn out well. And I mean, the example, the best way to refute that bogus statement is just meeting great kids of same-sex couples who are loved and doing work well and flourishing and are going to be great adults. And you know, and we tried to, in a way, do that in the film. If we you know, tried to let an opposition member say something and have their own words, we tried by example to refute that. Whether it was you know, whether it was Holly talking about what faith really is and the Bible really is, or showing what family really is. I mean, so hopefully we shot that down just by example. And it's a reminder, though, that those tactics are going to be used in a lot of different ways in the months and years to come, and there's a lot of battles to come. And young people now will be the people who are still fighting this battle in years to come, and I hope that that everyone will stay vigilant.
You know, one thing too, we really want to, there are a lot of reasons we wanted to make the film, but you know, as you see, it took such a long time for these goals to be accomplished, and yet so quickly things can go away. And we felt that we wanted, of course, for the work of the incredible people that made this happen to be remembered on film, so that there was a record of what was done here, because it's such a remarkable accomplishment. But also to be able to go into, which is another goal of the film, you know, is to be into schools and to libraries and to organizations and to keep showing it to young people and, you know, all kinds of people, to keep them inspired and remember, it was a big fight. It didn't happen that easily. And as difficult, you know, and as long and as difficult it took, it can be taken away that fast, like that woman in Virginia. I mean, already. You know, it's just that easy, and I think you just can never forget. And we really do hope that the film will stay for people as a continual reminder, you know, that you can never forget, because the minute you forget, people can take away your rights.
Can I? Can I be an audience member for a moment and ask a question of the panel?
Okay.
Forgive me for doing that. But I wonder if, not about the film, and not even professionally, but I wonder if each person on the panel could tell us how this process, what they went through, changed them personally. Not professionally, but what it did for them personally.
So you want to start with
You.
Justice Robinson?
I already talked about it in the film. I'll stand behind my words there.
Oh.
I don't have anything to add either. We've gone back into our shells.
I'll say something about it. This process deepened my understanding of the significance of marriage. This process allowed me and my partner Enrique, who have been together many, many years, to both experience civil unions and then to experience marriage. And it deeply affected both of us in ways that I think it's fair to say neither one of us had fully anticipated. And so it was a very personal experience, and one I will be deeply grateful for always. And to be part of something that changed so many people's lives. Every time I'm aware of someone, of a couple, same-sex couple, having a wedding, I'm deeply touched that we got to be part of bringing that about. Rarely do you get to affect that big a change. Yep.
I find that there's a part of my soul that now has joy, that I can go to reach into for that moment when it passed. And it makes me smile, and it makes me think to myself, the world can change, and how much it can change for everybody because of the work that everybody does. And so I think back at that moment when I'm going through some of the drudgery that other legislation is, and it reminds me that we can really make a difference. And it's just a really special place in my soul.
I'm not going to be nearly so profound. For me, it was truly freeing to go from, I think when I joined the Freedom to Marry, I had just quit being zoning administrator in my town. And my life was very town-centric. It was the same town that I lived in that I grew up in. So I was coming out to people that I'd known my entire life. And that was profound for me. I also kind of zoomed into this community, which I had no footing in before. And I've met some fantastic people that I know truly if I need anything at any time in my life, they will be there. If I can remember their phone number. But it's just that, I mean, I look around this crowd now and the hours that I've spent with a lot of these people, painting signs, setting up booths, traveling. That gets to my heart. And that's what I take forward.
Me, I can tell you what I learned. I learned sort of life lessons about discipline. I think that this struggle for us was, people are going to be mad at me for saying that. The gay community wasn't particularly disciplined, okay? We wanted things, but there's a big difference between wanting things and having a plan and making it happen. And that's what I found so amazing about working with Freedom to Marry. It was like, okay, we want these things, but that's not enough. And you have to, I mean, when we got to the political part, I was like, holy shit, man, I have no idea what's going on here, you know? And there was so much thought went into, I remember the conversations around when is the right time to bring the vote to the legislature? You know, and you had to think about not only who's in the legislature now, but who might be there next time that you don't want to be there. And, you know, there was just a lot of thinking. I feel personally that I understood from that experience that you have to make things happen. And I took that to work. And at work, I make things happen. And I think I learned a lot of that through my involvement in this community. So that's what I get out of it. The Pride Center for putting this together. Thank you.
I promise I'd keep you more than a few minutes. Because I know it's been a Please, another round of applause for the So one of the themes that runs through this film is community. And I want to say that for 10 years before I got here to Vermont, I worked in New York City in the Gay and Lesbian Anti-Violence Project, where I was a community organizer and public policy and stuff like that. I spent a lot of time on sidewalks with parents whose children had been murdered because of some homophobic outrage that somebody was feeling. I spent time with so many people who had been so very harmed by really horrible human beings. And so I thought, I'm coming to Vermont where people are nice. And it was true. People are nice here. But that doesn't mean that we don't need community. And it doesn't mean that we don't need a community center. We have to take care of one another. We have to make certain that as we grow older, that our options for safety are there. Whether we go into assisted living or whether we have home health care attendants come into our homes, we want to make certain that we have safety nets to protect us. We want to make certain that when we come out at 60, that there are people there to embrace us. We want to make certain that the world that our children come up into is a safe one. And that is what a community center does. It is the heart of your community. And so what I want to make certain that we do is keep going. And so you know what I'm going to do?
Is it where you need some money?
It is, yes. And so in your programs, you have an envelope. And if I could start with a few pledges now, that would make me super happy, but you can also take the envelopes home. But is there anyone willing to make a pledge to keep this community center going? Anyone willing to say, yes, I'll do it? Sure. Fantastic.
I'll do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And thank you. Oh, yay for a hand.
Get those hands up. Come on. Get those hands up.
Take those envelopes home. Leave them with me when you go. However you want to do it, I will take it. And as Lynn just reminded me, another job of the community center is to let you know what's going on. And so, Naked at the Met with Janice Perry. Janice Perry, are you still here? So if you want to come see this, or you want to, look at the plan, the listings, you'll see it. So please do that. Any other announcements that I should make? Jeff did all the thanking, so thank you, Jeff, for doing all the thanking.
Pride.
And I want to do one more thing, which is, again, to thank Jeff and Marcia for this incredible film. And not only for the film, but for allowing Pride Center to be a part of it. And if you all would, come on out to Pride tomorrow, which Bennett just reminded me of, because apparently I forgot it was Pride. So happy Pride. We are 7 into 8 events in less than 2 weeks, so I'm a little mushy. So please come on out to Pride tomorrow. I'd love to see you in Battery Park. So thank you very much for this evening.